Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm in Anishinaabe, Algonquin, and Huron-Wendat territory. And all of you are spread across Turtle Island. Sometimes we even have friends from the southern part of Turtle Island, so we'll see if anyone's there as well. In the chat, if you will, this evening, I'd love for you to just type in what traditional territories you're on, or what treaty areas you're in. What region of Indigenous lands are you currently sitting in right now, as we all join together. So just type that in the chat, each of you, if you will. And if you don't know where you are, I've shared the link before. I'll put it in a bit later. But nativelands.ca will give you a bit of a map. Also, any of your Native Friendship Centers, it's a great place to connect with as well. While you're typing in there where you're from, where you're living, I just want to also share this with you. Hopefully, sometimes things come backwards on the screen. This is called, and I'll put it in the chat later too. This is called 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. This is written by Bob Joseph. It's a great read, and very much recommend it to any of you who want to read and learn quite a bit about the Indian Act and how it's affected Indigenous peoples where we are. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, everyone, in the chat. We will pass this microphone over to Roddy Ward. Roddy is going to talk with us tonight in our second to last summer PD session on ski technique. He'll give us a little update on GMP as it relates to, and then in general talk about some skiing technique pieces that you can all take home with you. So thanks, Roddy, for joining us again and sharing with us. I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm assuming you can see my screen. It's all good, Jack?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Okay, when I was sharing before, I couldn't see anything, but now I can. It's weird when you can't even see yourself. At least I can see myself. Okay, here's what we're doing tonight. We are hopefully able to switch this thing over to another. Technical difficulties already. There we go. We are going to talk about ski technique tonight. The intention of this call was to actually show you guys our gold medal profile ski report card or ski assessment. That isn't done yet. It has continued to come along, but it's, I think, more of an involved project than or maybe originally thought out, so we're still a little ways away from that. I am going to I'll give you a little bit of an update on exactly where we're at with that in a minute, but I definitely can do some GMP update, but while we're here, we do know we have basically established at least the key performance indicators, the pieces that we want to focus on in the report card. And I think I can share with you with those tonight, and they should hold true unless we have some drastic changes. But I think confident enough to go forward with that. Either way, I'm gonna a little bit go beyond that a little bit in the technique tonight. Since we don't have the full report card, I'm gonna focus tonight on one skate and offset. Two techniques maybe use the most. And yeah, so first I have some basic research that's the most up-to-date as we can have, and then I'll get into some more details about the actual ski technique. I also hope to share some videos, and I have hopefully a bit of a trick to do that. And also Justin Wadsworth is here on the call as well, our national team coach, and he also can answer some questions, and maybe Justin will share something as well, or have some color commentary for me as well. So anyway, to continue, a big reason, of course, why we've started the gold medal profile is, of course, to improve performance. We definitely, as a nation, I think have been quite clear that a big priority for us is to improve ski speed. So from the research article, I'm going to go through a number of slides. All of it is actually from this systematic review in 2020 by a number of researchers from Italy, Sweden, Norway. You can go check that out if you want it. I might be able to put that in the Google Docs. I did have to pay for this one, but it's basically a big comprehensive systematic review of all the technique research that has happened since 1992. So I spent some time reviewing that. And my point here isn't to put down a whole ton of quotes. It's mainly to capture some themes and commonalities in the research and what sort of we found. So anyway, to get us started, obviously we're here to talk about ski technique. We want to have good technique because we want to have fast skiers. So you can see skiing speed performance and linked to the maintenance of certain sections of a race, maximum speed, time to exhaustion, and skiing economy. So I think in general, technique can be applied to all of those pieces to the puzzle. And of course, so also can tactics and fitness and mental qualities and health and equipment, etc. Tonight, we're here to focus on the technique, and certainly that can have a really big impact on all of these pieces that make the performance. So the next few slides, again, are just sort of going through that research. So the main goal, of course, is to promote forward propulsion while minimizing unnecessary movements. We want to go down the ski track, and we don't want to do any extra movements outside of what's going to carry us in a forward direction. So we want highly effective, powerful propulsion that promotes better performance. We want even distribution between our right and left and upper and lower bodies. Modern skate technique greatly involves the upper body and body positions to keep the center of mass forward. We're definitely going to go into that tonight. Important to simplify movements and reduce extra movements. Covered that before. And increase the cycle length can improve propulsion and efficiency. So cycle length, if you think about it, it's like maybe a longer cycle versus just really quick tempo. That would be a high cycle rate. So looking a little deeper into cycle length and rate, the faster skiers, we do know they have longer cycles. This is really true in offset, or sorry, in one skate and two skate. And offset, it's pretty limited in this case. A higher cycle rate, so you could look at that as tempo, relates a lot to actual maximal speed, whereas self-selected cycle rate improves ski economy and sub-maximal speed. So the athlete has to be also involved in selecting their rate and trying to extend their cycle length. Obviously, in a sprint or a sprint to the finish, up a hill to get, move past somebody, we may venture towards maximum speed, and tempo can become a factor for sure, especially at the end of the race. Faster skiers also employ a shorter poling and thrust phase in combination with a longer glide and recovery phase. So that goes a lot also with that cycle length, having a short, powerful, snappy kick and pole motion, and then longer glide and recovery phases. So more relaxation in the cycle and quicker application of power. Center of mass is a big one. The center of mass in fast skiers deviates less from a forward direction of movement all the time. So that's no matter what in the cycle of the technique, it's always more forward. They have a lower vertical and lateral displacement, so they're not going up and down as much necessarily, or too much side to side. They're going more what they need to do, only what they need to do to achieve the right technique and efficiency. But again, they have more forward center of mass the whole time, and here it's at pole plants and during that first part of the poling phase, which we'll break into that. We're going to break the technique into some phases to sort of 4 steps, and that pole plant and the first part of the poling phase are steps that we're going to look a little deeper into. They have greater extension in the hip and knee joints at pole plants. So think about when they go forward into their most forward, highest position, they are extended at the hip, knee, everything is forward from the ankle. They do that better. And I'm not sure how much to get into this. There's something called a double push. I'm not sure if everyone knows what that is, but it's a little bit like jumping as you bring the foot in onto the inside edge on both skis. So there's a little more vertical movement in that. So we know double push improves cycle length and increases the forward body extension. So how to get forward when we're about to plant our poles, but it does negatively affect the center of mass vertically. So it's something, it doesn't mean it's bad, it's just something that we need to know. Obviously going up is less efficient than only going forward, but depending on terrain and speed, those choices can be made by the athlete. Probably a great deal of stuff on the poles, I think likely because it's pretty easy to measure, pole forces, etc. So faster skiers begin the poling phase with the poles more in an elevated position according to the trunk. So they're more up, and the poles are actually also more vertical. So if you can see my pen, the poles when they begin, I'm not going back here, they're more vertical. And then of course, the best skiers have a lot of speed. So by the time they put crunch into their poles, they do have an angle and an optimal angle in their pole to push into the ground. As I said before, they produce their peak pull force is greater. So the amount of force put on the ground is greater, pretty obvious. And they produce that in a shorter period of time, so more powerful. And they also do that later in the poling phase. So we'll get a bit more into detail about that, but essentially it's, the poles are already planted in the ground, and then that next phase, as they push, as their body falls forward, and as they also crunch the abs, the maximum pull force, peak pull force happens then. Versus an athlete who may be more like less good or junior would be often really a lot of force as it goes into the snow and less later. So it's important that once it's in the snow, we push and we have that forward lean to really push into the ground. Faster skiers exhibit more synchronized poling. I think a lot of that has to do with they're just better balanced than non-elite skiers. And yeah, enhanced pulling forces. They enhance pulling forces with a higher body position. So I went through this at pole plant, which again enables that forward falling and gravity to act on them. And then they activate the trunk and you have increased pulling forces. So that body position at pole plant and then pushing into the ground is critical for getting those forces to move forward. Lower body, some pieces on this that we'll touch on a little bit later too. The faster skiers have smaller angles in their skis and the direction of the movement. So basically, if you think every skier, there's a V, we ski in a V. The V is more narrow with the better skiers. They don't have such a wide V, they're more narrow. They have, in general, better range of motion in their knees and ankle joints. So they have essentially more range in their flexion and extension in the ankle and knee joints. So if they're getting really forward, that's a very extended, and then they also get down into the position, and that's the flexion that we're looking for. We are looking for a very specific type of flexion into the body, and we'll cover that in a bit. And while skiing uphill with offset technique, faster skiers exhibit more symmetrical edging and more force generation with the legs. So basically, they are when they have a V, the V is more even. So it's not like one ski is forward and one ski is back. They're more like in the same way as the feet go forward. Imagine feet as my hands. And more force generation in the legs. Stronger athletes, more powerful impulse from the legs. Timing, so we think about timing. So we have us, I think, break this down into kind of two phases. There's obviously the timing of how we push the poles into the ground and kick, so our like power timing, and also recovery. You could say as the arms return back up to a high point, that would be the recovery timing. So in recovery timing, the swing of the arms resulted in higher forces and increased cycle length. Two things we want. but also increased demands, aerobic demands at slow speeds. Probably anyone who tried to swing their arms and do like offset up a hill, for example, in zone 1, pretty challenging. So it has to be balanced there, but at moderate to high speed, swinging the arms enhance the impulse of the leg force and at self-selected speeds while reducing anaerobic involvement and improving skiing economy. So some advantage to using arm swing in the return of the hands to coordinate that arm swing with the kick, and we'll go a little bit more into that also later. And power phase, so really I think knowing, this is obviously also linked to this body position, this first piece. So knowing peak pole forces come later, not only when you hit the poles into the ground. You put the poles into the ground, and then that as you fall forward, because you have a forward body position, as you fall onto those poles, and the athlete engages their core and pushes, there's obviously their shoulders, their arms, their back, they push into the ground. That's when we achieve peak pulling force. So we want to make sure there we're really utilizing that. And also sequential activation of the muscles. So not everything happens together. There's a way, there's a sequence of the muscles moving. And here you can see in one skate that the order is hip, knee, ankle, shoulder, elbow. So think as an athlete kind of crunches down to load into their high, and now they're going to pole plant, and now they're crunching down in that power phase. That's the order. So we want the best athletes are able to do that sequential activation and create sort of like a whip-like motion. You think about like someone like throwing, starts centrally, ends peripherally, and they whip. There's like a whip. And so we're getting that also in the power phase. Also, you get that also in the recovery phase if you swing your arms as well from the torso through then the arms. Not everything exactly together all the time. Hopefully those demos are okay. So that's like, I would actually say, why not? Hopefully I can share it. I probably can. And if I can, then it's easy. But I would definitely, if you're interested, just go to the research article. It's 2020. It's as brand new as you can basically get. And again, it basically summarizes pretty much what there is to summarize. Obviously, technical research is ongoing now as well. But that kind of brings you up to speed, at least to 2019. And yeah, so that's sort of the background of the research, kind of what we know so far. So obviously that has to inform our practice and our ski technique. Also, we have research. We also, of course, have best practice. So we can also look at what the best are doing as well, and also utilize those things in the technique and what we choose to do and focus on. So to give a little update on this GMP, on this technical ski side, we're in the process of making this report card. This, how this is a more of a high level report card, possibly potentially can be used for athletes who are younger. I think most likely it'll work quite well for athletes who are maybe like 15, 16 and older, who are really focused on their technique and good to do that and be evaluated. And then also a ski technique manual is being worked on. Nordic Canada is working on that. Eric Bratton mainly is working on that one with Justin and myself, and Robin are also heavily involved. Robin Kiever, Paranordic. So it's a real Nordic, as we've done with everything, it's a real Nordic mix, trying to do this together and find those commonalities. And we all know, of course, if you produce a ski technique manual and it's different in biathlon than cross country, that would obviously make absolutely no sense, because many of you clubs are also biathlon and cross country. So we need to have the same language and way of doing things to move forward, I think, in the best way. So just to give you a quick, I guess, key performance indicators. So basically the way we're going to break this ski report card down is into two sections. That's body position and timing. And both of those have 3 key performance indicators. Again, tonight we're going to go through those, but I'm also going to elaborate a bit more. And I'm also going to even get a little bit more like detailed on some ways that we can like get there So a little more prescriptive, which maybe is just like my coaching side and my way of describing this. It doesn't mean it's the only way to do that, but the idea with the KPIs is that these are consistent and we can evaluate these things consistently across different coaches and sports, Nordic versus biathlon, etc. So you'll see those 3 body positions. So body position, really important, and timing. So I went through timing in the research. Body position is essentially how we hold our body the whole time. So there's going to be 3 positions: power position, power line, and ski liftoff. And the timing, obviously I went through that research, pretty similar to what I think I've said already. So we'll focus a little less, I think, on timing, but pole plant, leg kick and push, and the recovery phase. And Jack, I see like messages coming up a lot. So if anyone has any questions that are relevant to the situation or to the now, I would be okay to hear it. Otherwise, I can take a break maybe here after one skate and take some questions.
Sounds good. I'll let you know if you need to look at the chat, or I can tell you them.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So just getting into some basics, I think a lot of you probably are aware of this. These are basic body positions for skiing, really for all techniques. These are in classic and skating. These are really, really basic technical components that we need to make sure we're able to do. So those are flexion in the ankle. You can see actually, let's see if I can do a little highlighter. So what I mean by flexion in the ankle is right here. So we have a lot of flexion in the ankle. So the best athletes, they have a lot of flexion here. They have a high hip. This means that the hip isn't sitting back, but the hip is instead high. We're not using necessarily forward on purpose. In one skate, it will go more forward, and always it's forward. Your center of mass needs to be forward, so it's always a bit forward, but really we're using high. So it's a high hip, lots of flexion in the ankle, and this forward lean of the upper body. So we always want to be a little bit leaning forward, sometimes maybe a bit more than others, but a bit forward lean. Want to be on the balls of our feet. So we're always in that like forward ready position. If anyone's like, most sports, volleyball, like there's so many sports where basketball, you want to be in that like ready position, balls of the feet, some flexion, suppleness in the ankles, knees, hips, and a little bit leaning forward. So similar position, a little specific to skiing here. I think also we want to be sure in that forward lean that we make sure we have a neutral pelvis. So around the hips and pelvis, that we're not like tucking, let me give you a quick demo. So that we're not like, this is gonna help. We're not like tucking under here, or they're not like back like this. It's more neutral there. You guys can see me. Can you guys actually see me in the camera too?
Yep,
Jack?
that was good. Yep.
Okay, good. And a neutral spine, so not bent over, not hyperextended back. Maybe it's helpful if I just keep doing this. Yeah, so if we're in this position, we have not arched back, not an arched back, not forward curled like this. We have instead a neutral spine, and our head and neck are part of our spine, so they're our neck. So it's in particular also needs to be neutral. So we're not like this, we're like this. We got a neutral neck. So in general, you're looking maybe 10 meters down the trail, and the head, yeah, that's where the head would be looking. So in general, this is the case. Maybe a small difference would be an athlete the head might come down a little bit when the athlete crunches in the power phase and engages the core. But in general, to stay neutral. And another one, that lower picture there here now, important here is that our hips and our shoulders, our torso, so all of this here, this needs to stay stacked, no twisting and no dipping. Okay, so dipping would be like this, twisting would be like this. In offset, we're going to go through this. There's a small rotation. as you offset, but the hips and the shoulders, the torso, everything, if there's headlights here and there's headlights here, they'd always be pointing in the same direction. So they, in one skate, they're really pointing forward the whole time. And an offset, they might slightly rotate, but they're together still. Twisting would be that they're not together anymore, or you're doing something funny with your hips. They're up and down, or the shoulders are up and down, dipping with the hips, dipping with the shoulders. Any twisting funniness is provides or gives you instability in the positions. It also is a huge waste of energy, and it also puts the body out of a position to apply power the best, most effectively. So we want that really stacked torso the whole time. And I say weight on the ball of the foot, never the heel. We always want to be working in the front of the position. If we're on the heel and if our butt goes backwards, it's like putting on the brakes. We're just putting on the brakes. We want to always be even at the lowest point. We want to be always still in that forward position. In one skate, that'd be like when you put your foot down on the ground and you're going to transfer your weight. Even there, you want to be forward on the balls of the feet. And then, of course, as you come to a high forward position, you're going to be almost on your toes. You're going to be, depending on how fast you're going, you're going to be a lot further ahead on your feet, ball of the foot and further. So those are like basic principles. Of course, offset would look a bit different. You're not going to go from the ball of your foot to the toe or change that. You're going to actually, it's going to stay always on the ball of the foot, but you're always still going to be in that forward body position, flexion from the ankle, high hip, forward lean, neutral spine and pelvis, weight on the ball of the foot, that's from the side, and then from the front, looking for that good like stacking on each side, a good connection in the torso. Okay. There we go. Okay, so here are our body position KPIs. So again, these are the pieces we're working off with the report card. We want to make sure in these moments or at these times that we have some really specific things we're looking at here that we know from best practice and from the research that is important and that the best skiers are doing. So here are three. I'm going to blow this up a little bit more in the next few slides to give to also give us a couple extra stages to help us get to some of these positions. But the first one is at the top there that's that power position. So that's when you've just now come forward and you've put the poles into the ground. Now they're in the ground and you begin to pull, and you would have initially, you'd plant your poles somewhere up ahead of the feet. It's really going to depend on speed, but somewhere ahead of the feet, and you'd begin to pull, and about where your poles come to your feet, this is the time where we can actually stop the video and we can say, okay, are we lining up how we like it? So here you can see what we're looking for there. It's looking for a lot of those same qualities as the basic body position. So we want a lot of that forward lean coming from the ankle, so flexion in the ankle, some in the knee, but a high hip. That forward body lean. At this point, the spine is mainly neutral. Maybe we're actually starting already to crunch maybe a bit in the top of the abs. I think this is important that we crunch, that we're crunching like up here. We're not like hinging at the waist, but we can utilize our abs. What we don't want to do is we don't want to send those hips backwards, and if we bend over too much, then the butt's gonna go back, and then everything's gonna be back. We're gonna lose ankle flexion. We're gonna lose that position. So in this position, if we are there with the body, if we get the body there, what we gain here is now we're forward, and so now our center of mass is outside of base support, or our center of mass is far forward, and now gravity's acting on us, and we're going to basically fall on the poles and be caught by the poles, of course, and then also push into the ground. So here's where we get that peak pulling force. That peak pulling force. So an important position to see, really common, you can see below, I've highlighted these ones. These are really common errors with athletes. So if we go up high into this position, you can see this athlete here is sitting back and they have no shin angle. So that's something to look for. Their hips are behind or low, not high. And yeah, they're not able to like get their torso, head, and everything up towards their poles. Okay, everything's behind. An athlete like this won't be falling on the poles and using their body weight to push down on the poles. They'll be like rowing or reaching really a lot on the arms to move. And then the one below that is the example I had mentioned. If the athlete hinges at the waist too much, they just bend over at the waist too much. Again, we lose this flexion in the ankle. The hips go back or down, and yeah, we lose that body position. And the same thing, we don't have our full body falling onto the poles as we apply some force onto the poles. Okay.
Roddy?
Yeah.
Question came through to me. So with the first one there, we see the pole plant at the heel rather than at the toe. Is that purposely there?
Yeah, okay, I'll be really clear here. This is not the pole plant. Pole plant would be here. This is as you start to go. When this is just the point where we're gonna assess the technique in the report card. Okay, so at this point is where we're gonna take a snapshot. You would plant your pole up here because the faster you go, the more forward you're gonna plant your pole, basically. But you plant your pole ahead of your feet, and then you start to pull, and then you would keep pulling. The point here is that this is in the report card. This is the point that we're going to assess this body position. At this point, when the poles are here and we have an optimal pole angle for pushing, we want to make sure that that body is falling forward onto the poles. That help?
Yes, thank you. Wanted to make sure that that didn't get lost.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
While I have you, there's
Yeah.
another question that you may be answering later anyway. With any ideas on optimizing the pole length for technique improvement?
Let's deal with that one later.
Perfect.
I think optimizing, I mean, there's like very general guidelines. Right now, I'm drawing a blank on right now relative to your height. Justin might know it. If he knows by heart, he could come on and say it. Otherwise, we can say it till the end. If Justin doesn't come on, we're gonna have basically what we want to do is like optimize the pole length to how the body position is going to be anyway. So like in general, you know, we're looking at somewhere in the pole length of here. I can't remember the centimeters. One other ski coach on here might remember the centimeters. Nordic Canada is pretty clear about that. And but in general, you're looking in this range of where the pole height would be. Not too tall. Then we're going to be like, if we're actually in a forward body position, our hands are going to be above our head. And shorter you can be, I mean, that's classic. But you're obviously not going to get the same power into the ground if the poles are too short. Yeah, that's why I like double poling, maybe only races or sprinting, they even have a bit longer poles in that too. So we need to optimize that. There is a rule at hand. I just can't think of it at the moment. Okay, am I good to move on for now? Maybe someone can look that one up.
Yes.
As I talk. Okay, ski liftoff. So now we have put our ski down on the ground and we've transferred our weight to the new ski, and now as that ski lifts off the ground. Okay, this is ski liftoff. At this point, this is again, we're looking for this body position. So again, we don't want those sort of sitting back behind this, our hips back or our hips low. We want to be forward. Lots of flexion in the ankle here. Actually, we'll go through this in a minute, but you're going to land that foot with flexion in the ankle quite a lot and a high hip. And you're going to step onto the ski, transfer your weight to the ski. And as you transfer your weight, you're even going to push even more into the flexion of the ankle or drive your knee forward even more to get into this body position. And then as the foot comes off, not too late, you're going to have a really forward gliding position. So we want to be like, as the hands come up, now we're gliding, and we want to have a forward position as we glide to high hands, to the high position. And the third is this power line. Okay, so this one is the one that's actually assessed from the front. Basically, it means that you're stacking over the ski. So this is an example of one skate here. Again, this can be assessed. This can actually be assessed through a lot of the skiing that we make sure, we will do this. But a really good time to do this is at the ski liftoff point. Here you should have, which is this picture, you should have 100% balance on the ski, or you should be completely stacked over the ski. So this is the nose, knee, toe, and hip, but I mean the hip's even a little bit on the outside here. So you're fully stacked, and this is what we would say is 100% balance. So like if we were in a frictionless world, you would glide forever. You could glide forever. That should be like the cue or the assessment. If you're really truly over your ski and on it, balanced 100%, you could glide forever. Okay. Sorry, my computer's glitching a bit here. Okay. So I mentioned here, just to go into the one scale a little deeper, so we have those like report card features. Remember, think of this as a high level assessment of national team, junior athletes in the field, but also likely an assessment during testing on a treadmill. So we want to expand, I think, a little bit on that when it comes to what we do in the field and what we do with up and coming athletes. So I have added a couple more points here. But basically, in one skate, I want to take you through like a full cycle. And so the cycle begins, I'll just show you quickly here. The cycle begins as we put our foot down in cycle. So that's number one. Our cycle begins here. We then are kicking. So our foot, sorry, we get down, we put our foot down, and now we're going to step up on that right foot. We're going to have ski lift off. That's KPI, one of our KPIs. And now this athlete, you can see, is nice and forward in that position. So they're going to be moving forward. Their center of mass is forward. They're going to go up all the way into a high position. They're going to be as high as they can. And that's going to be a mostly straight body. Again, we want extension through the knee and hip. The knee here looks okay. Maybe the hip, to be really picky, could be a bit more extended. And then we get into that high position, so that's that next position, and the power position again as then our poles get put in the ground, and it's not right as they get put in the ground, we're going to assess it from a little bit later once they go by the feet. Okay, so when they're at this angle where we're going to get this maximal pole angle to push the most effectively into the ground. We want to make sure we have that really good forward position from the ankles. So my notes, to go a little more into detail, we'll go back to this start position here. So again, here it's a lot of this basic body position pieces. The biggest thing is we know that the center of mass is more forward more often or all the time in the lead skiers. So we never want to get caught behind. We never want to end up with a straight shin or our feet forward. We never want to end up with our butt back. We always want to be in a forward position on the balls of our feet, or maybe even, on the balls of our feet and a little more. Like you can move a bit in one skate, but that's like the goal. And I think another really huge goal here is we know that the best skiers are getting more forward and higher in this position. So here we want the most like extension we can possibly get to fall onto the poles, utilize gravity, fall onto those poles and get that power, get that most power. Of course, we want to fall on the poles a certain way into this body position so that everything's falling forward together, the whole body, and we can maintain this body position through the cycle once more. So to start with this one, we have the first, I'm just calling this start. So I think it's really important that if we want a forward position here, again, it's important that we always have one. So this is the lowest position your hip will be in at the bottom. So you finish pulling, and now you're stepping down onto this right foot. Okay, a really common thing is athletes will step forward and out with the foot. And then when we step forward, our butt goes backwards and we lose a forward position. So it's so important that we land with lots of flexion. Like literally as the foot hits the pavement, we are already flexed a lot into this ankle. Our hip is high and we have this forward lean, neutral spine, neutral pelvis. This is a pretty good example of this here. We're on the wrong side, unfortunately, but that's a good example of the right leg there. So again, quite good. I should highlight too, this is a 16-year-old athlete as a very good example, and I chose it on purpose so that we have, I think, a good relative age. I'm guessing a lot of people here are dealing with like 14, 15 to maybe 18, 19-year-old athletes. So this is an athlete who can show a lot of these key KPIs, and they're only 16 years old, which I think is impressive, but it's also where we need to get to. So we'll look at our 16-year-old model here, and we have lots of flexion on landing. And again, what I'm going to mention here is then we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to weight that ski, and here we even need to drive this knee even more forward. The other way to look at it is we need to create even more flexion in the ankle as soon as we get on that ski. If we do, and high hip and forward body position, if we maintain that high hip forward body position, we load into that flexion, and then as we get on that ski, we push further into that flexion. We're going to have a really nice forward. He's already falling forward. We're going to have a nice forward falling position in the beginning of it, even as we now are in a glide phase on the ski. So think about now, he's just gliding up, and he's also swinging his arms to come up to hit a high position, but he's forward. So he's just getting a lot of that center of mass forward, and center of mass forward means speed. That's basic physics. So you want to be balanced, put your center of mass inside of you. You want to have some speed, you put your center of mass outside of you. So you need to be forward. And so he's got forward through his glide. So this is a good assessment here. Still loads of flexion in the ankle. The forwardness is coming from his ankles, coming from his whole body. It's not just hinging forward. The whole body is forward. Hands are starting to come up. Really nice and neutral here still. Same at the top. Now he's got a high position, so he's come forward. This is also up a hill, just so everyone sort of has some context here. It could look differently if he was a little less of a climb, but in general, you want to be as forward and high as you can be, essentially, I guess within reason, and that forwardness needs to come through that whole body. Okay, he's also noting here, he's also come up nice and high with the hands and elbow. I mean, you don't need to go above your head, but you can't also be like stopping at your armpits, which is something I see quite a lot also with athletes. If you're stopping here and you're not like coming fully up, well, you just see what happens with me. It's often, if you want everything to come forward and you stop here, the whole body position will stop short. So you have to come up enough with the elbows and the hands that you actually can bring your whole body up. Upright. So there's a balance to be struck there, but this is a pretty good example anyway of where it can be. And yeah, moving into the power. So now again, the athlete has now been in that forward position. Now they're pushing into the ground and they begin the pole. And now the pole is actually, I've screwed this up a bit. It's a bit too far, but you get the general idea. We want to, really important here, as we pull, as we're leaning into the poles and using our core, we can flex a little bit in the top of the back. We can't bend or hinge at the hips or waist because our butt will go backwards. And we have to maintain ankle flexion. So as you push into this position, it's really important that you push in with like a way to describe it is like a curtsy movement. Let me see if I can do it. So we're not, So we're not trying to go down like this and get into the quads. We want our quads high and our hips high. We don't want to be like wall sitting all the time. We don't want to gain power from a deep wall quad. It's so much energy here. What instead we want to do is we want to get deep, but here. So almost like we keep the hip right above the foot. So it's not back like this to get power, it's down like this to get power into the ankle. So as you double pull and come down, you're coming also into the flexion in the ankle, keeping the hip high, and a little crunch. If it's a crunch, it's in the top part of the ass. So we don't, again, if I crunch too much, butt goes backwards. So we're trying to avoid going backwards, going back, anything back, and staying in that forward position. Because when we get down here, we still want to be, even at the low point, we want to be in that forward ready position on the kind of balls of the feet position, and not back too much on the heels. So it's a really critical time, and I find young athletes in particular, it's a time they either bend over too much, or what they do is shoot their feet forward. They just lose those angles. They lose that body position, and then the center mass goes back and not forward. Always to be pressing this position forward. I'm going to show from the front also here in the next slide. I'm just wondering if there's a question related to side position, Jack, that I should take.
Side position? No, not that I've seen.
Or side view, I should say.
No.
Okay.
Unless someone has one now.
Okay. So this is exactly the same cycle, way the cycle is split up. So again, the whole cycle on the one that's on each side, from foot down to up, high position, through power position, back down to that low position. That's one cycle. So I've broken it into 4. These are exactly the same as before. The first one on the right here is that start position, that ski lift off, the high position, and that power position. Okay, so I just basically captured a moment in time on all those. So again here, similar to that front position, we're looking again, if we remember, we want to bring that foot in and we want to put it down with lots of flexion. So to do that, we can't step ahead. We also don't want to step out. So usually what an athlete does is they step forward and out, forward and out. And then what happens is you have less flexion in the ankle, you have a straight shin, you lose the body position, but also when you do that, then you're chasing your whole body has to chase that foot to be stacked on a ski. So instead what we do is we bring the foot all the way in. And actually, if I took a photo of, or if I was videoing this right before, and I guess we can show a video in a bit, but this foot would swing in even more underneath the person. And then you try to put this foot down almost exactly underneath the head. This is a pretty good example here, I'd say. So the foot goes down right under the body. You could draw a line there from the foot up to the head, and that athlete would be then already, even at foot plant, pretty much stacked on that ski. And then what that athlete's going to do, with lots of flexion with that forward body position. Okay, then what that athlete's going to do in that ski lift off is now the weight's going to transfer. Again, we're driving that knee or flexing more into that ankle. So we even further try to bring that body position forward, or bring that start position so that the body can go forward. And then in this ski lift off position, the hands are starting to return. This is also a big glide phase. Here we should see 100%. This is a good time to look at when that ski comes off, that you are 100% balanced. So this is like the nose, knee, toe, hip just outside position. So again, this is pretty good, 95% maybe. But really, really solid. And for a 16-year-old, exceptionally good. And so this athlete, yeah, wants to be 100% balanced. They could glide essentially forever. And I think that's a pretty good example there. Also note the torso here on most, I guess, all of these slides. He does also quite a good job of not twisting or dipping, etc. Maybe a little, I think his dip's actually on his other side. So this is actually quite good here. So a good torso, keeping that torso together, keeping it stacked, and everything just nicely above and facing forward. Again, if you remember I the headlights, if you had headlights on your kind of shoulders or top of your chest, and 2 on your hips, you'd want them facing in one skate, facing down the track in the same direction, just basically lighting your way. So that weight transfer happens side to side without any real movement of the upper body too much. Then into the high position. So now everything comes up. Now you see the athlete starting to transfer their weight, because they're going to, of course, fall over to the other side of the ski. The really good athletes here are almost still totally stacked on their ski, just maybe barely inside. So here is Zav. It's pretty good. I just give away his name. And let's see, what am I high position? So yeah, this is from this point of view, and then of course through the power position. Now we see, this is the point. Now we see this foot. This is before the foot hits the ground, and he's swung it even completely right underneath, because we know we're going to put that down right away. So from the front, we're really just trying to assess this like really clean shifting of the weight and a good stacking on that ski, so that we can be balanced 100% on the ski. So yeah, I think that's like pretty much what I wanted to cover one skate. Now would be a good time maybe for some questions. It might trigger something I forgot or something someone's curious about, but I think my main point is to cover the like basic, really important things. I guess I didn't say this at the beginning, but like what I'm going to do is pretty basic, but the best athletes have like mastered these things, and the not so good athletes just aren't quite as good at these things. It's not like a crazy things you got to do on, well, it's not like so many things you got to do, but you have to do these like forward position and total balance on a ski. You have to do those things so well. They almost can never be good enough. They're always working to be better and better. So anyway, Jack, any questions with one skate?
Yeah, anyone, you're welcome to pull yourself off mute too to ask a question or two rather than typing it in the chat. So you can do that. On the back to the pole length, which seems to be a hot topic, was a question just about any indication of going longer or shorter based on the skier's abilities, strengths, or weaknesses. I think it's, the mouth is the good target. You probably don't want to be longer than the nose and shorter than the chin. And I think it's an important piece to be really focusing on that body position as the key thing, and not really adjusting too much, say their poles or other things, to try to compensate for those weaknesses. So I think in and around the mouth length, as Justin was saying, as well as good, and then really work on these key pieces that Roddy mentioned to get the athlete in the right position. We see sometimes people going way too long with the poles, and then of course you can't get this ankle flexion if your poles are too long, because you're trying to, by then your poles would be way over your head if you're getting also ankle flexion. So just be careful of going too long as well, which was a trend for a while. Anything to add there? And then if anyone else has other questions, please ask them.
Yeah, I know, I agree. If Justin said the mouth, that's, yeah, somewhere around there. I think it's, something to be, not think too much of until maybe you're looking for like the 0.02%, and you're playing with those things as you're trying to hit the World Cup podium or something. This is not like so much of an important thing for like a junior athlete. They need to be so good at this balance and body position piece. We shouldn't even bother wasting our time with too much detail around the pole length. Somewhere around the mouth or chin and nose, and really focus. If you're too tall, a big thing is like if you actually ski properly and you actually are forward, they'll just be so high. You won't be efficient in that way. You won't be coming onto the poles. They'll be like way up here. So there's some range. I think it's that's okay, but my advice would be not to focus on it too much, not to be caught up too much on it, but get like super caught up in the things I'm saying today, like these key things, like get like detailed about that, because these are like pieces that like even a little bit inside your ski versus what the skier here has is like exponentially different over many cycles on a ski. How forward you get, that power position, how to model you are to that, those make exponential difference, like massive differences in the skiing, massive differences. We have to be so good at that. Get picky there, would be my advice. But a super good question to ask, so I could say that, so we could address that. Any other ones, Jack, or should I keep going?
Hey, Roddy, actually, I have a question for you, and it's going to be a whole lot easier than if I write it down. So I'm definitely more on the old school side of ski technique nowadays. And so when you say that you're coming into that power phase and you want that swinging foot to come underneath the hips, and that's where the ski is put on the ground. The way I learned skiing back in the day is you were kicking that foot forward so that you wouldn't have kind of an adherence and have a 4 point of contact where you're still in that double pulling phase. And you want to be able to push onto that ski once the double pulling phase is kind of close to over, right? So I'm just wondering, like, what is the benefit that's been proven that bringing that hip, putting it down, bringing that foot, putting it down a bit earlier underneath the hip? Is it like a ski compression, lengthening out the ski and getting that glide going earlier than if you're pushing the foot forward, you're a bit lighter on the ski, you have to push on it to lengthen the ski type of thing? You know where I'm going with this? Like, what's
yeah, so
type of thing?
For me, it's all body position. So if you land with your foot, if you kick your foot forward, you will have you'll lose the shin angle. So relative to your feet, your bum will go back, and so your center of mass will go back. And what we do know is that the best skiers ski with their center of mass forward the whole time, and the most forward the whole time. So we want to maximize the forwardness in the position. So this is a way to, not a way, this is a way to always be forward. This is the most dangerous time to get behind. It's actually when technically your hips are the lowest. This is the time where you could easily, your poles go too far back, you step forward, you hinge at the waist. Those are all things that can send your center of mass back. And we don't ever want that. Never in the position we want that to go back. We always want it to be as forward as we can have it. So does that answer that?
Yeah, in a way, I guess. Yeah.
Am I understanding your question?
I'm not even sure I'm asking it right, so no worries.
Okay, well, we can keep on that one on offline if you need. Afterwards, I'll show you some examples.
I think if you stepping forward at all too, then it's like the example, and maybe you can show it physically there too, Roddy. It's the example then of where you have to utilize that quad, that leg, that butt to bring everything forward again.
Mm-hmm. And is it Jeep? Is it like does the athlete step forward? A little bit, like some step, like if you look at the best athletes, some would like step maybe a little more than others, but all of them don't barely step forward at all. Some of them really, like Surya Rota, puts his foot straight down, and lots of the Norwegians do that. Some of them, I have some video of Seth that I'll show you. There's a small step out, but not much, because you still see that body position and ankle flexion a lot. A young athlete who, if you're actively trying to step forward, you have no shin angle whatsoever. So you'll completely lose that position, that forward position, and we never want to lose that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for me, this is kind of novel, and I'm just trying to kind of picture it in my mind's eye, like just the whole process, the biomechanical process of it. It's just different from what I was taught and what I'm actually teaching my athletes. From a position standpoint, it makes absolute sense. I'm just trying to get the picture of, like, when I'm pushing, how does it feel, and what feels like maybe a better or less energy consuming type of thing. But from the thigh angle and all that, I mean, it makes absolute sense. So yeah, it's a good, it answers the question, I guess.
Super awesome thing, Jeet, would it be go try it. Not now. Keep listening for a bit, but
I'll be on the skis tomorrow, man.
the next few days, and let's talk about it after that. I'd be interested to talk to you about it. Cool.
Good. That's
Any
all
others?
for questions in the chat right now.
Okay, so I'll show you guys a video. What time we got? 6. Oh boy. I need to switch screens to properly show the video. So, or switch Zoom or to my phone on Zoom. So I'll go through offset, and we'll try to do some video at the end. And maybe I'll try to speed things along a little bit here. Okay, so offset key points. So we're going to look at this slightly differently in offset today. We still can move into those KPI pieces. So I'm still going to go through those. So for example, in this picture, we can still assess this power position. So again, he's planted his poles and he's starting to push that far right. He's starting to push into the ground, and it's the poles. I don't have perfect timing here, but it's close to the foot. So we're going to assess, is that body lean happening onto the poles? And I think he's a good example of this. And the ski liftoff. So on this one, I'm doing the other ski. So now he's actually on his non-poling side. Again, have we established something that's going to, have we established a body position that in this glide phase, as he swings his arms forward, is he going to be in a forward position? Because it really need to be here all the time in offset. So there's that KPI, and we can also assess power line. Sorry, a little glitchy. We can also assess power. Oh man, come on. Power line. Again, here in offset, I mentioned that we need to be stacked in the torso and over the ski. But here you'll see in offset, we don't actually 100% commit to a ski. We maybe more do a 90% weight shift, but we do that 90% on both sides. So we weight shift the same on both sides, and you can still assess this from the nose to toe and sort of relative to where the knee is. We can still sort of look at this about a 90, nose, knee, toe, about a 90%. I'm just throwing that number out there. It's imaginary, it's mine. Even on both sides and almost weight fully, but we're still not quite there. And you notice the hips are quite different in offset compared to one skate, where we drive that hip out. This piece here. So in offset, I'm going to kind of go through four points here. 4 key points. One is body position. Obviously, this is important. 2 of our KPIs are in here. Basically, in offset, we want to always be in this essentially the same forward body position, or close to the same forward body position the whole time. As the athlete is in that ski liftoff, their back, they might come slightly more upright in their upper body, and then crunch a bit more at the end. But in general, you want to be really maximally flexed in the ankle. Again, have a high hip. We don't want to sit back like a wall sit. We want to stay off the quad. So a high hip, maximal flexion in the ankle, and you'll see in some video that the best skiers get so much. And that forward lean, neutral spine. And again, if we're crunching in the abs, like you can see here in the power position, at the beginning, it's happening at the top, and that we're not sending that butt backwards. We're trying to, in offset in this body position, we're always trying to basically keep that forward lean the whole time. And you're pressing that forward lean into the hill, always into the hill, as much as you can, basically. So, but from the foot, right? So everything pressing, that good athletic stance, not hinging, nothing but pressing in that body position. Then we want, second point, we actually want I think probably a lot of you have heard the term wide feet. We don't want the athlete to bring, a really common thing is they bring their foot almost underneath them and then back out to where they put it down and then kick. That's obviously a movement we don't need to do. We need to just bring the foot up and forward into flexed ankles, into that forward body position. So we're not overstepping exactly like one skate, but we actually keep the feet wider and we actually just put the foot down where you're gonna start to kick it. And this is exactly where that goes is maybe a little speed relative, but in general, the feet are wide and we're putting that foot down to where you're gonna kick it. So all up to just to where that foot's kicking. Up just to where the foot's kicking. The most efficient path only to where, okay, right away you're gonna edge. On a really steep hill, you might have already edged as you hit the snow, but either way, you're gonna be pretty close to kicking and the ski is gonna kick and that's gonna mean wide feet. A really key component to this, really key, feet are wide, but it's this V. So remember from the research, the best, and this was an offset, the best athletes, if these are my skis, and so this would be close feet, we want wide feet. So this is my V, then I don't want a V like this. I don't want a V like this. I want even V. We know the best skiers have even edging and even pushing on both sides, more or less, and or more than non-experts, and that we have the least angle we can. Of course, an athlete has to decide what the exact angle is going to be relative to their speed, but we don't want a huge angle. If we have a huge angle, what happens is you have no chance to glide on that ski and the ski will just run out and you'll have no weight shift at all. Weight shift a lot on one skate. It's a quick kick to each side, but it has a lot to just kicking off the V, kicking directly off the V, but the V can't be too wide. The V's not very wide. You're almost kicking just like side to side, side to side. Okay. Obviously more V if it's steep, the steeper it gets. So there's obviously, these are general principles and they have to be maybe a bit detailed on the speed, but in general, wide and as narrow as we can have it. And a really hard thing to do, you teach this to an athlete, the first thing they'll do often is they'll lose forward body position. They'll like sit back, like almost like I don't know why, but this is what I see a lot. As soon as I'm like, go wide feet, do wide feet, they almost like sit down like this. They like rotate their femurs out and they like sit down like this, and then they're like this. But we actually want a high hip. So we actually want wide feet and a high hip and flexion. Again, that curtsy movement, right? Like this. So we're staying in that position. Lots of flexion in the ankle. High hip, forward lean, neutral spine. In offset, to get power and weight transfer onto both skis, we allow a little bit of rotation. I think a good way to look at it that was sort of told to me by a fellow coach is when their athletes are young, this was a Norwegian coach, when the athletes are young, they get them to rotate maybe a bit more to get to feel like they need to push the energy in the direction of the ski. So they need to be on this side and push to the other side, on this side and push. They need to stack over each ski. As they get more senior, you'll see they still emphasize both skis, but it's maybe a little less rotation. But there's some small, at least, rotation to really get the power out of the legs and that weight shift, that quick weight shift back and forth. And yeah, those are like, I think the four, those are like the main, I guess, components I would say to these like body position pieces. I think a really important piece in offset is if we look at that research with arm swing related to like increasing the impulse of the kick. I think this relates quite well to offset and two skate. And in that, you know, we can use the return of the arms to help us have a more impulsive kick. So like a really like it's a basic example of this is like if I'm gonna jump. So a lot of people probably heard this in two skate. It's similar in offset. It's the same concept. If I'm gonna jump, hey Roddy, jump as high as you can. you know, I'm not going to jump like this, right? I'm not just going to not use my arms. I'm also not going to do my arms and then do my jump. I'm going to do them together. So when we do that, we get a reaction force, and it helps us push more into the ground. That's why we jump higher with an arm swing. So we want to actually also utilize that in its own way in offset and in two skate. We're not covering two skates tonight, but in offset, that's also something we want to do. So we want to have that part of the polling, and it's at least, often the athletes do it too late, but it's at least the last part of the polling, that we are getting some help in that kick. And it's going to change. If it's like a really explosive sprinter, they're probably going to start the swing timing earlier in the arm swing. And if it's more distance, it's going to be a little bit later. But either way, they're getting some help from swinging the arms, similar to in two skate, where you, I would say, get a lot of help from way back to improve the impulse of the kick. And it improves the impulse, right? So that's like the force and the speed, which is what we want. We want a quick kick. We don't want this like long dragged out kick. We want a quick impulse, get the ski off the snow. Again, also, if we kick so long, we're going to lose the body position. We're going to lose that forward high hip body position. So we have to maintain that. So that the athletes need to learn to put lots of power impulse into short polling and shorter kicks. Remember, the best pull a bit shorter, more power in over a shorter period, and same with the kick, than the not so best, but then have longer recovery periods, which the arm swing is that recovery period. When you do swing the arms, it's really important that this has to be relaxed. This isn't like you're like, this should be, everything should return. It should be relaxed. You should find relaxation as you also do this. So yeah, I also have to think this is a recovery phase. So we don't want to be like throwing it necessarily wicked hard. Again, depending on how fast you want to go. But so, okay, so that's just to show you. I think we can pretty much go to video pretty soon. Oops. Sorry, my computer's really bad. Just wanted to show you this front position. So again, this is a good assessment here of power line. So again, the athletes just put their foot down, they're starting. So this is maybe a little bit before, or no, power line, sorry. Yeah, this is as they put their foot down essentially. And you can see the athlete is maybe like 90% over the ski and a bit rotated towards that direction. And then on the other ski, this isn't the greatest angle. It makes it look like it's more than it is, but there is some rotation and driving, really important here. We drive also the energy on that offside. We don't, really common is an athlete will like be like this. They'll like pull up, they'll be like way over on this side and then nothing on this side. Way over on this side, then nothing on this side. Way over, then nothing. We really need the same on both sides. You need to drive onto both skis. Drive that body position. Okay, it's 6:15, and I want to do a little bit of video. So what I'm just going to show you is also the PowerPoint's not working super well. I got 2 more slides in here. I'm not going to go through them. I'll send this out. You can read them. But I basically have put down like just some advice on maybe like just my advice on how like I like to do the technique with the athletes. I think knowing what to teach is obviously important. But where I've like learned a lot from other people is just how also they teach. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers here, but I have a way, and maybe there's something in there that you like or you can use, or a few things. But I think there's a really big difference. The best coaches, the really good coaches that I've seen, that I'm way more impressed with how they teach or coach versus what they coach. And I have lots of examples of that. So I thought I would just share, put myself out there and share how I like to do it and what I think, how I think it should be done, or how I like to focus. And so you can take that and look at it, see what you like there. And now we've gone black. Oh, there it is. I also on here have basically I went over with the text with like the World Cup techs and Nordic and Biathlon. And we're like, hey, for an athlete who's like a junior, a good junior, what should they be, you know, building themselves towards in the way of a ski fleet so that they have like a competitive fleet of skis? Because again, I said like at the beginning, I had all those pieces on what makes skiing fast. Technique was one of them. Equipment was another. You can be a super good technician and have great technique. And if you got totally bad equipment, is obviously is not good. So you have to build the athletes since they're entering training to compete, I think is well, even when they're young, but they're going to grow and then they're going to start, maybe they're going to grow a lot. So it's complicated to get equipment for young athletes, but it's also still a really important time as a junior or even like 15, 16, 17 that you start to develop those ski fleets for the athletes. And that you're like reinvesting, or the athletes like kind of getting rid of stuff and reinvesting in new stuff like each year, that there's a cycle there and how you manage the skis. Because, you know, when they go to World Youth, when they go to World Juniors, if they are tracking that way, like those athletes have obviously very good skis, and we need to, our athletes, you know, we don't want to be behind because of equipment. So it's like a regular process. So I have a list. You can't see it, but there it is. I have a basic list on, again, this is what a junior should have. So as a young athlete, you could be like working towards trying to get something around this. It's a basic list, but to have that like in your bag, so that, yeah, everything's good. And you can see I have classic on there too. I mean, I think obviously athletes should do classic when they're juniors up to junior. They should be racing cross country. In my opinion, they should be racing classic. Obviously, I didn't say this tonight, but I mean, our ski report card is going to have the same KPIs for every technique, classic and skate. There's so many commonalities. I went through body position tonight. You probably can think about how you can teach most classic technique. The one skate, if you think about that high position I showed you, there's no difference between that high position in one skate and that in double pull. It looks exactly the same. I'd show it to you right now if this wasn't the glitchiest thing ever, but maybe I can get that. I won't waste our time. Okay, Jack, I'm going to switch to
sounds good. So while Roddy's switching, if everyone can please go to menti.com again. We really appreciate that everybody does, even if you're sharing a screen, even if you know the questions that are coming up. It's really great for us to have this for data. So please go to menti.com. I just put it in the chat, and fill out the forms there. So division, what division you're from, the roles, etc. So menti.com 31 81 73 3. That would be great. And I'm just gonna put my video on so you're not looking at a boring screen. You can look at me. Thank you for a bunch of you jumping on there. Again, on your phone or on your computer, menti.com 31 81 73 3. Once we get, I think we have 44 people on the call.
I'm back.
So once we have a few more people answering this first question, I'll move it on to the next question. Okay. We'll assume that about 30 of you are going to answer for us. Any of you still jumping on there, that'd be great. It's on the top of the screen now for you as well. Okay, next question. What roles do you play? You can check off multiple roles. Great. And next question, what group of athletes do you work with? And again, you can check off multiple groups. Great. Thank you. And the next one will be the takeaways from this session. You can start writing them in now if you like, and I'm sure you have some takeaways already. And then as Roddy continues through and shows a few of these videos, if you have more, type that in as well. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions for anything for us, comments, you can type that in there too. And I think, Roddy, you're set and ready to take over again.
Okay, you can hear me? Yeah, I see
Yes.
my screen light up. Okay, so I'll try to share some video here in a creative way. So this is, okay, this is World Cup Norwegian skier. So just an example I found today, but looking at offset. And we can look at a few things here. We'll just play it a couple times. But basically here looking at what we were sort of talking about, that body position, that forward lean the whole time. Lots of ankle flex, high hip, forward body lean. We'll pause that at the side and look at that in a sec. Wide feet and ski direction. So making sure the skis are the most they can be towards the uphill. Of course, this is a very steep hill, but they should also be evenly spaced uphill. And those feet should be coming only to where the athlete's gonna kick them. So you can see pretty wide stance in the feet with this athlete here. And that weight shift 90-90, so a little bit, definitely pushing onto both sides. So you can see that still that emphasis on that left side with him, and he does it maybe minimally, I suppose you could say, but still some rotation there. So he's emphasizing both sides, pretty even kick on both sides, and like a quick weight shift onto each side, onto each ski, about 90% on each ski. I'm making that number up, about 90. And the last one to just keep an eye on there is just that arm swing, so that he's using that, again, that last bit of the arm swing, probably like, 2/3 of the way till the top. You can see he swings the arms and it's timed with the kick, and it just gives that little extra impulse in that left leg. And that impulse is important because actually you can then have a short, high power impulse kick. And if the kick is short, you will not lose body position and go backwards. Because remember, we don't want to kick, like we don't want to be like way out on the kick. We want to have that, keep that high hip, flexed ankle, high hip, forward lean body position. High hip, high hip, high hip, not sitting back, not sitting back. Okay, I'm going to pause this from the side. So there's the foot down. Well, you can see me. There's the foot down. So very clearly lots of ankle flexion there. And good hip placements, in my opinion, for putting the foot down, and a good forward lean in the upper body. So he's got a good forward position, and this is, again, at foot plant. So maybe the most dangerous time to lose the forward position is at foot plant. And then it comes forward, presses even also more, lots of flexion. Now he's coming down. I missed that power position, but you could imagine that, actually I can go back, in that power position. So high position actually here is the foot landing. It lands at the same time as the pulls. Now his pulls go back. He's starting to apply power, and now he's got a really great forward lean. Lots of that coming from the ankles. That hip is high. He's not sitting back at all. He's that whole body is forward, and he's pushing into the poles. And onto the other ski, same thing. Lots of flexion in the ankle. He's keeping that foot back. We don't want that foot stepping forward. That foot is back, so that forward position is maintained. And then here he's coming up a little bit, again, sequential activation of the swing. So a little bit with the upper body first, then the arms, and allowing that to swing, allowing that to add a little impulse to the end of that kick, the quick kick at the end. Basically, that's when you kick an offset. It's a snappy finish. Just watch this whole thing. And yeah, this isn't like a sprint pace or anything, right? This is like, who knows what this is? This training video, maybe a threshold. Justin might have he sees athletes like this more often. It's certainly not ripping, but still has that, still using that arm swing to assist the kick there. The harder you go, the more anaerobic threshold. Yeah, thanks, Justin. I thought so too. So yeah, you would expect even more arm swing the faster he goes. The more, that it helps the kick. The more like aggressive swing, I guess. Okay, that's one example. I stick to offsets, sure. Where is turn off the sound.
Roddy, can you tilt your screen down just a bit?
It's about what I can do. Oh, this? That's worse, huh?
Nope, that's good. That's better.
Okay, so this is at Norwegian Junior Nationals 2 seasons ago. This is a top junior, but he was a IBU Cup athlete as well. And yeah, he's got, I think, a good offset and maybe a little more a junior example for us. So we'll wait for an offset, but same key points, looking at that body position. We can stop that for him too, but that's basically what those photos are from in the slideshow. So we know already he's got a good forward body position. He's gonna have nice looking for that wide feet and even ski direction. 90-90 weight shift, so you'll see for him a little rotation, really emphasizing a push on each ski, but not twisting, but emphasizing the push onto each ski, wide feet. And again, this is a long climb. This is probably like 5 minutes into, well, maybe it's like 3 or 4 minutes into like a 6-minute climb. Basically, this whole loop is a climb. You see like a little break in the middle just down there. It's not even a break, it's actually a working section. And then it just keeps going. It's all downhill, all uphill, all downhill. That's this course. So it's yeah, not like a typical biathlon fast uphill. But still, I think you can see a good like timing with that arm swing to again just assist of that little more impulsive kick. We'll watch it one more time. I think this is also maybe a good video to start with for one ski. Okay, and I'll since I got this queued up, we'll watch a little one skate from a distance here. Assuming you can all see. Yeah, so here I can, from the front, we can assess that power line. So that's stacking on a ski. So again, he comes up, that foot swings underneath. It's almost even more under the other side of him than his head because he's putting it down right under his head. Very nice. He's at foot touchdown and he's already stacked on the ski. Nose, knee, toe, hip out slightly. He's well over ski, so now he glides and he's absolutely 100% balanced on that ski. He could ride forever if he didn't have to set up another push. So really good. Now he's transitioning over his weight. Even at the high point, he's still nose, knee, toe. He's still completely stacked over his ski. I hope you guys can see that well. That's a great example. And then pushing that power phase. Yeah, pushing down, but now transferring his weight. Okay, One more. Nope. I'm gonna do this the hard way because I want to also show not just men. Here's my iPad. Apologies for the delay. So this is actually a youth Norwegian who was at World Youth this year. But again, same concepts. Wide feet, looking at that even ski angle, trying to be as narrow as you can. Body position from the side, lots of flexion in the ankle, high hip, forward lean, and that right, left. So a little rotation, definitely you can see more rotation here. But maybe this is where she's at with it. But definitely some rotation allows you to transfer that power onto each ski. And I think a lot of our athletes don't push onto that low side. They don't push that last bit of the polling and drive in the direction of the no polling side. And I think it's something we miss, a common thread that we miss here too. So making sure they're polling up on the one ski and also pushing onto the other ski. One skate, we'll do some one skate video. All right, I can bring up the pro. So this is maybe a small variation here that I think is maybe a little bit important to mention. So he's, yeah, anyway, one skate you see from behind, really nicely stacked on each ski. So not like tipping, twisting, really good, solid headlights forward, weight transfer on each ski. I mean, this is a turn, so it's a little tricky to say, but I think you can see lots of flexion in the ankle. He's really got that good body position going. Bringing that ski underneath. Yeah, just maintaining even around that corner, something we don't talk about a lot, but keeping, not letting, really common for our athletes I see to be sitting back as they go around a corner. So to be more like even cornering like this, where you're always forward, always, again, the best athletes we know, they're always more center of mass forward all the time. And we know that they have their center of mass is less side to side too. So they have a more like clean weight shift as well. And you can see that, I think, a really good example from the back. Here. No tipping, dipping, really solid. Again, also bringing that foot underneath, establishing that good body position. The little thing here is you can actually see, I talked about the double dance or the double skate or double push, the double push. That's where there's that little hop. And again, so the research would say the best athletes have that center of mass is more forward all the time. And the double dance allows you to have more of a longer cycle length, but you also have then your center of mass is moving more vertically. So it doesn't mean you don't do it. Like he's choosing to do it, and this is like one of the best athletes in the world. It's more like this is a decision, and it's very small. You see, he's not like necessarily jumping in the air, but it's a bit hoppy to get his foot underneath, because that other foot, the kicking foot's disappearing, and that other new foot's coming in. So it's a little, he's got a little hop. I mean, that's an efficiency decision to like, yeah, increase the cycle length, get a little more forward, get a little more power, but he's also here compromising maybe a bit to go a little more vertically in that hop. but it's very small. But just in case anybody noticed that. I think we don't need to like necessarily teach juniors to do that, but maybe some understanding of what that does, where the energy going up is maybe not the way we want to go, maybe more forward is the energy, where we want the energy to go. Okay, and here's an example of Canadian, and we can see from the side of this one. So this is Catherine Stewart-Jones, our best distance skater. And she's technique's pretty good. So again, we'll assess this from the side. So she's planting her foot, pretty good. Maybe if I'm picky, maybe a little tiny bit of a kickback, but lots of flexion in the ankle. You can see if an athlete kicks back more than they kick sideways, we want to kick off the V, sideways off the V. If they kick back too much, then everything can fall behind, just like when you pull too far, like the hips will go. So you can see maybe here, to be really picky, the hips go a little bit. Maybe they could be a little higher, but you still have lots of ankle flexion. The hips maybe could be a tiny bit higher, but a really good neutral spine, forward-leaning position in the upper body, super good. And then she pushes further into the flexion. If you get caught behind a little bit, you won't drive that knee and increase the flexion right here as much because you're already a bit back. So if you stay in that forward position and then you step on the ski, they will come even more forward. So then you'll be in even more forward position as we come up to glide. But it's quite good and coming forward, and then there's a pretty good high position. I think Justin had a good example for me the other day. If we cover here, really we wouldn't be able to tell if it's double poling or one skate, but even the best, we don't even need to do that. They have the same position in double pole and one skate anyway, because their feet are together, because everything's together in a good body position. Okay, I think that's like some decent video from me. If I'm not sure, Justin, if you wanted to share any, I think definitely not needing to, and I'm putting you on the spot if you do and are able, but you just tell me. I don't want to disclose you if you are ready for anything like that or want to.
No,
Otherwise,
only if you want some other examples for like side view of one skate of World Cup athletes, like for COD or anything. Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, why don't you show one for COD? Why don't we try? And you give us a little.
Could you share the screen on Heather Ambry's account?
Jack, where are we at with the sharing?
Yeah, I can share.
Oh, it's just coming on again.
You should have.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to Hoodle. So this is just I'll go at piece by piece. This is Martin Fourcade at the World Championships training in Zone 3. And you can see the initial position that Roddy was speaking of. Very important that we note here the shin angle there. And what I always tell my athletes is to make sure to see if their heel's still off as the ski goes down. If their heel's off and the ski goes down, then you know you're going to be in a sharp shin angle. And we'll look at the high point of also the position here. And this is a great example of a very forward position. And this is extreme maybe, but it's Zone 3. And I think for COD, at his point of his career here, he was using his technique for really his advantage. So a couple just pretty interesting views there.
Justin, I hadn't heard the heel off as you put your foot down. It's a super good way to look at it. I also sometimes use in roller skiing, as you put the ski down, that both wheels hit the ground at the same time, because you know you're stepping forward if the back wheel hits first and then the front wheel slaps.
Yeah.
So,
No, exactly. So we always look at that on both offset and one skate.
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone wants any other. I can just go to some examples of my athletes here currently. Also, just looking at some of those examples of things we're working with. This is Megan Banks. Notice the high hands, forward body position, and again the shin angle there. We're looking at right there. And here I was telling Megan the one thing we need to improve is right here. I don't, as her ski is right here as it's coming up. I'd like to see her heel, her left heel, come up a little bit to provide a little bit more forward body position. To me, this is a little bit too vertical there.
Mm.
A good strong pulling position. And again, a good shin angle going on in the skis. We've been really stressing the shin angles again because it just takes a lot of load off the quads of the athletes. I can also do one quick offset. And using the example here from Emma Lunder from just the other day, trying to get her not to do the what we call the sideways V. You can see like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really working on getting the hips over here and keeping her feet wide. But you can see there, I was telling her the upper example, the feet are too narrow here, and then the hips don't move side to side, versus the lower one. It's a better example of the feet staying wider. So anyways, I think I'll end it there because we could go all night with this. So
That's awesome. Thanks, Justin, for
couple
sharing
small
it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, wicked. Okay, I think now's a good time to take any questions. Either myself or Justin. You can ask Justin questions. He's here. He's coaching our best athletes, so it's a super opportunity for you guys to do that. So yeah, Jack, is there any in the comments or?
Yep, there is one, and anyone else can type one in, or again, take yourself off mute. You can even put your video on if you like, and ask a question. There's one question in the chat right now. Does the technique vary to any practical extent between women and men? Should our expectations of the mechanics be the exact same?
Well, for me, like I hope I covered a lot of things tonight that apply. They're basic pieces that apply to all athletes. I think it would probably have, there's obviously some individual builds of athletes, so things might look slightly differently, etc. But those basic principles, I think, apply in my opinion. And I would say more like also the technique is adapted. Yes, every athlete would adapt the technique somewhat to the terrain or the speed at which they're going. So it's not really a men and women thing. Because there's lots of women who are as fast as so many men. But for sure, there's some variation in the technique principles in speed. So for example, maybe the steeper it goes, the speed comes down, and even the wider the feet go, is an example. And more less V, for example, and the more faster the athlete's going, the more straight down the track it be. Those are like basic principles that the technique can adapt to. But in general, we want to have as small as V as we can, and an offset, we want to, put the foot where we're going to kick it. So that's going to be change a bit different compared, depending on, again, the speed of the athlete. Yeah, male, female, I'm not sure that's the right way to look at it, in my opinion, but I don't know that for sure. Justin may have a different opinion.
Yeah, I don't think there's any difference at all. We teach the exact same positions and have the same. It's more with the individual athletes with their ankle flexibility. That's one of the screenings we do with the athletes in the spring. It's just testing for their mobility and their ankles is really key. So between male and female, it's no difference.
Cool. Good one.
Great. We'll take one more question if you have it. So jump off mute or put in the chat, and then we'll wrap for the evening.
So I'll put the PowerPoint in the Google Docs folder, and I've started to put some video in there. I'll put some video in there we've used tonight. Yeah, maybe we can get a few examples from Justin's also in there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Here's a good question. Knowing that ankle flexion is super key and important. I mean, working on mobility there is going to be a big thing for starting from young athletes. So please do that. But the question is, do you have any different ways to explain ankle flexion?
Justin, do you?
Yeah, I actually, I would describe it more on how it feels to the athlete when they put their ski down. If they are in offset, or one skater should feel like they're landing on their toes and pushing off the ball of their feet. So never, like Roddy said, never do you want to feel like you're on your heels at all. Sometimes I tell my athletes, pretend you have a thumbtack in the back of your boot under your heel, and you don't want to put your heel down on that thumbtack ever. So when they put the ski down, if they feel like they land on their toes, generally that's going to put them in ankle flexion. There's almost no way to do that without putting them in ankle flex, without having good forward ankle flex. So that's one way to explain ankle flexion, because sometimes it's hard, especially for younger athletes, to visualize what they're trying to do without feeling it. So if you tell them to land on their toes and then push off the ball of their foot without ever having pressure on their heels, you generally find that helps with athletes. And one easy way to do it is to do easy one skating in flat terrain in zone one, and just keep the feet underneath and only land on the toes, and then onto the ball of the foot, and then right up with like they're kind of coming up onto their body weight up onto their poles. So it's never, if you can go around and ski around a small loop, a flat loop, and don't have any weight on your heel, you're going to be one step forward to maintaining or getting that initial shin angle the correct way for one skating.
Yeah, I think I've shared like a couple ways I'd like to describe it to people to be different. One is similar to Justin's, to land on the ball of the foot. Another I think is similar to Justin's way of describing maybe the ski, having the heel off the ski as it goes down. That's kind of a neat way. I haven't thought of that or looked at that before, but I've definitely have said to put both front and back wheels down at the same time for the athlete, so they get that sense that both wheels are going down. Also, for some reason, for some athletes, it helps that they always feel like they're keeping their feet behind them. So somewhat like running, you're never like overstriding, you're always keeping your feet back. So you're always almost catching up with yourself. The feet are going back so much that you're always you're always like forward leaning and trying to catch up. That sometimes resonates with people too.
Kind of like how babies walk when they learn to walk. They're just always moving, falling forward. Center of mass forward.
Yeah, and then, I mean, obviously, I think this isn't always possible. I think probably a number of people on here would have like, even Justin does this in the winter, maybe have like 30 kids and you want to have like that. I think Justin's points were probably really good because you might have 30 kids and, you know, you need something to say to them to feel it in different ways. You know, when you can, obviously, with older athletes as your group shrink, I have that in the document just to make sure you're like actually showing them video of themselves and that they're like also a part of that assessment in the video. So they're like looking, they know what they're looking for. They're looking at these things. There's model video that they're comparing themselves to. So they're like actively knowing what it is actually, what's actually happening, because their feelings versus what actually happens is usually like way off, especially when they're trying to change something new. They need to like exaggerate something like a crazy amount. It feels ridiculous. And you're as a coach, like, that's it, you've got it. And they're like, whoa. But in 2 days, it feels normal, or in a week, it feels normal, or whatever, if they're diligent with it. So yeah, keeping them coming in the process and showing them, letting them feel it is obviously really good, and then also showing them is also really important, I think.
I'll add to this that especially with not as elite athletes or younger athletes, please get them off the skis once in a while and get them into these body positions that Roddy showed and talked about, and you can see in the stick people. Even Roddy was doing it himself in the office just here for you right now, but they need to see it, they need to feel it. If they can't do it on a little skinny ski balancing, gliding forward, it's going to be very hard for them to feel it in that moment. So take them off, let them understand and feel it first. Without the ski, get in that position, feel that, and then put them back on the ski.
Yeah, dry land imitation is super good.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Great session, Roddy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Justin. Lots of good feedback in the takeaways. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. In the chat, I mentioned I was going to, at the beginning, the book that I held up there, I just put the title in there, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act by Bob Joseph. And we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for the last of the summer series sessions, Masters Biathlon. So come and check that out on Programming and Coaching Masters. So thanks again, guys. Justin and Roddy. Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for being on.